Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome back. Today we are going to unlock the secret, how to get called back without that stalker vibe. This is a podcast that was motivated by a number of Julie's personal coaching clients. In addition to that, a lot of folks who were messaging us in Instagram asking us about this very question, because obviously the world is leaning back towards people that are picking up the phone, actually making real contacts, relying, they can rely on digital contact, texting and emailing and all the rest of it, but they know the power of actually voice to voice. And that might be leaving a message, but obviously, ideally, the goal is to speak with someone. So what we're going to be doing today on this podcast is we're going to be going through 10 proven secrets to make it so that you actually do feel comfortable and confident when you're leaving that message and following up with people, because it is very simple and very easy to feel like a stalker. So thank you for the suggestion on today's podcast. And if you have any suggestions for a future podcast, please do feel free to message us over on Instagram. And of course, Julie and I are Tim and Julie Harris over on Instagram. Simple enough to remember.
So, of course, we know you're looking for more appointments with your buyer and seller prospects. Of course you are. But what if those leads aren't answering and don't call you back? Are they ghosting you on purpose, or are they just busy with life? And how do you know when you're calling too much, becoming a creepy stalker, versus just being a salesperson and doing your job? The following 10 proven secrets, which we'll split up over 2 podcasts, will help you spend more time on appointments and less time chasing those leads. It does take discipline and strategy to get those leads to respond, but we'll give you some simple secrets and steps that you can start with today.
So I interviewed Kevin Yoder, Julie, and that podcast is coming out this Thursday.
Yes.
And on that conversation, he and I ended up talking about all kinds of different things, but really practical, tactical things for like 90 minutes. And one of the things we talked about is how important it is to not try to have a ton of leads, which is counterintuitive to what the industry is telling everyone nowadays. But really your mission is to not have a ton of leads, because you can't effectively follow up on all of them. Now, let's translate this to a way that you guys can understand. A lead is someone who's basically been pre-qualified. You know what their motivation is. So they're motivated, they're pre-qualified for motivation. They have realistic expectations, and they have the financial ability to perform. And if they have a house to sell, you've got the listing. So if we're talking about buyers, that's kind of the criteria for buyers. And with a seller, you're going to look for somebody that absolutely positively has to sell. Now, how are you going to know what their motivations are? How are you going to know when someone basically goes from just a name on a piece of paper, and then they go and they actually are qualified to become a lead? You have to use our pre-qualification scripts. The scripts are designed, it's just basically a conversation outline to root out what the motivations of that seller, so that you don't lose a really powerful, motivated lead amongst all the others that are just basically names on a piece of paper. And that's the problem ultimately, and this is what Yoder and I talked about. That's the problem ultimately with having too many, air quoting here, leads, is that they cover up the good ones. So your goal is to disqualify someone as a lead. Look for reasons not to work with them. And when you're using our pre-qualification script, that's exactly what's going to happen. Hopefully that resonates with all of you. But start with this. If you're wanting something practical from today's show, go through all of your air quoting again leads, use our pre-qualification scripts, ask them all the questions, find out what their motivations are. And if they're, like, for example, if you're talking with a seller and the seller doesn't have to sell, or they'll sell when pigs fly, or they're going to sell when their kid graduates from high school, but it turns out their kid's only in the 3rd grade, right? I mean, those types of things. That's not somebody you should be spending a lot of time with. Now, you should still call them, and maybe those are the people that are best for you to, do long-term lead follow-up, maybe even digitally, passively. But ultimately, you have to be calling all of your leads and asking the tough questions that get the actual results. That's the difference between a top producing agent and everybody else. They know to pre-qualify everyone. What a lot of you are making the mistake of doing is you're getting these leads and you're putting them all into these long-term drip campaigns. And I'm going to give you a little warning about drip campaigns too. Do this research on your own if you don't believe me. On every single report, every single project, or scholastic research that's ever been done on long-term lead follow-up. Here's the result. Long-term lead follow-up, believe it or not, works at like single digits. Like if you have 100 people and you're doing long-term lead follow-up, the number that actually end up doing transactions with you is like 2 or 3 transactions. Like it's none. Now, why is that? It's still, is it worth doing? If you had to make a choice between doing very thorough, pre-qualifying and obviously then creating a lead versus having a big bucket of leads that you're doing long-term lead follow-up and your actual goal is to, sell houses, you're going to want to focus on the skill set necessary to gather leads, pre-qualify them, and then end up with basically not very many leads because those are the leads that are actually going to transact. So for every 100 leads you generate, statistically, 10 of those are going to buy or sell within the next 90 days. Yet, you have how many leads, dear listener? And how many of those do you know for a fact are going to transact? I promise you, for every 100, 10%, you're going to have 10 that are ready to rock and roll now. Yet, you don't know who they are. You're waiting for them to call you back or email you back. You guys get it? So where are you going to get these pre-qualification scripts? Obviously, join Premier Coaching. And guess what? I have a little surprise for you. It's free for the first 30 days, and that does include a daily semi-private coaching call with one of our Harris certified coaches. And yes, you get these scripts. Do not wait. Join Premier Coaching. Just go to premiercoaching.com, or you can text the word Premier, Premier, to 47372. But the quick button is just to go to premiercoaching.com and join. Take your business and your skill set to the next level, because what we're seeing and what you're experiencing is a transformation in the industry, dare I say an evolution in the industry. So much confusion out there, so many buyers not knowing what to do. Listing agents, brokers, office managers, all this. I had an email this morning from, I was telling you, Katie Moulton, right, in Iowa.
Yes.
And she works with a ton of builders. And she's saying what's happened since the commission sharing lawsuit stuff got put in place. And she said they're getting inundated with buyers.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Exactly. Who are calling basically direct and, saying, well, confused about how the commission stuff's supposed to work now. Now, why is that happening? Because the buyer agent that they were previously working with did a dumbass job of explaining basically how the new rules work.
Or no job at all.
Or no job at all. Probably just sent them a form that says exclusive buyer agency, and here's the commission you now owe me. And of course, they're going to basically run for the hills because they're not understanding what this is all about, because those agents didn't know how to actually explain it to them, what the value was that they're delivering, right? You guys get it? During this time of change like this, that's when there's the greatest opportunity. Historical fact, the greatest fortunes are always made during the greatest times of change. We're in one of those greatest times of change now. Katie Moulton recognizes that. Other top producing agents recognize that. The number one thing you've got to do is be careful who you're spending your time with. Now, that includes leads, also includes podcasts, includes YouTube, includes business coaches, includes all these people. They're not giving you a clear, very easy to follow, understandable, step-by-step approach forward to making the most of this market and being in alignment with your highest and truest purpose on this planet, which is being of service to other people. So your next natural step is to text the word Premier to 47372 or just go to premiercoaching.com.
All right, so we're going to give you 10 action steps, proven secrets to get your prospects to respond to you. Tim, how can they get the notes? Because these are all things that every single listener can do starting today.
Right.
I want to have the notes.
Right. So just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and sign up for our newsletter. All you've got to do is drop your email in. It doesn't cost you anything. And we do give you our long-form notes, harrisrealestatedaily.com. Use these notes for your own education, obviously. Use them for social media. Use them for whatever you want to use them for. But the only way you're going to get them for free is just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and subscribe to our newsletter.
All right, so perfect. Point number 1, this is where the trouble starts for some of you. Answer your phone in the first place. Answer your phone whenever possible to cut down on all of those follow-up calls. If you're not with a client, a prospect, or at a family event, make it a priority to pick up the phone. This immediate responsiveness can significantly improve your chances of connecting with your prospects. Be there at the time they actually have their questions, when they need your help, or when they want to schedule an appointment. It's okay if you don't know the exact answer to their question, but you need to at least connect.
So this would be a good place for us to talk briefly about 1-800-HOME-HOTLINE.com. Sure. All right, so this is the benefit of you guys listening to us, because Julie and I sold thousands of homes. And we do know that given a choice between a consumer calling an agent directly or basically getting the information passively about a listing for sale, they're always going to go the passive route, like 9 times out of 10, even the ones that are super motivated. Why? Because the industry's trained consumers to understand that 99% of the time, agents aren't going to answer their phones and it's going to go to voicemail anyway. So there's a service out there called 1-800-HOME-HOTLINE.com, and it works very simply rather. Go to their website, watch the video, but here's the gist of it. So let's say you have a listing, which all of you are hopefully working towards, and on top of your listing sign, it's going to say for free 24-hour record info on this home, and then you're going to have your unique 800 number. You'll have your own unique number, but for the sake of explanation, I'm going to make one up. 1-800-555-1212. And then it's going to say extension 1234. What's going to happen is the consumer is going to be parked out in front of that sign. They're going to want the information on the house. They're going to call that 800 number. They're going to listen to a very brief recording where you're going to get bedrooms, baths. And, they teach you how to do this on 800 Home Hotline. And then you're going to give them a price range. Don't give them the exact price. Give them a price range. And that's going to be the extent of it. If they want to speak to you, they'll press 0. If they want to leave a voicemail with you, they can do that as well. But what most of them are going to do is they're just going to get the information and they're going to hang up. But this is where the magic happens. After someone calls your 800 Home Hotline number, you're going to get a text and an email, by the way, whichever you prefer. And then the system's going to message you, and it's going to say you just had, and usually it's going to identify them by their name, but at the very least their phone number. It's going to message you back the cell phone they just called on, or the hard line they just called from, but who uses a hard line anymore?
Right.
And it's also going to tell them what extension that they just listened to. So it's going to say, Bob Smith from this phone number just called on this particular listing, and then you're going to call them back. And here's what you're going to do. And this is a system that's so brilliant because it's so elegant and simple. You're going to call them right back. And now imagine Bob's parked in front of your for sale sign. And imagine Bob is, he's maybe a neighbor who's thinking about selling his own home, hasn't, even interviewed any agents yet. Or maybe he's relocating, he's just, perusing the neighborhood, decides that's the neighborhood he wants to live in, sees your new listing. So you're going to call him back after he's listened to this recording. You've now basically changed essentially your persona as a real estate professional because you've done something most agents don't do. You provided immediate information that's essentially exactly what he wanted. He didn't have to go to a website, didn't have to do any opt-in forms, did any of that crap, just basically got the information he wanted. He hangs up, and here's what happens next. His phone rings, and you're calling him right back. And you're going to say this script. And I will never forget this because Julie and I made millions and millions of dollars doing this. Hi, this is Tim Harris with, then it was Remax, but now it'd be eXp Realty. Hi, this is Tim Harris with eXp Realty. As a courtesy, when people call our 800 number, we like to give them a quick call back to see if they have any questions about the home they called about. And here's what their reaction will be. Never are they mad. Never. What they always are is absolutely impressed. And you can always tell the ones that are the most impressed. I mean, I literally am starting to feel the feelings I did when I call somebody back. It's been a long time.
Sometimes they're shocked.
That's the thing. They won't say anything. And the ones that go silent are the ones that cannot fathom that a real human is calling them back. They're expecting it to be AI or someone from the Philippines or a VA or some sort of automated, wanker system. And you're calling them right back and you're saying what you're saying. And they are going to be absolutely impressed. And they're going to ask you the questions like, well, what's the exact price on that home? And then you're going to roll into your buyer pre-qualification script. Remember I said don't give price, give a price range. Okay, then you're going to roll into your pre-qualification script. And what you're going to discover, I see you're calling about 123 Elm Street. Let me make sure that property is still for sale and get you the current price. Oh, by the way, which house in the neighborhood are you thinking about selling? Now, you don't need to ask for their name or their phone number because you already have their phone number and sometimes you already have their name, so you can skip that process. And you go right to that question I just gave you. Again, I'll say it again. So let me check to make sure that home is still for sale and check on the current price, reasonable. By the way, which house in the neighborhood are you thinking about selling? And here's what you'll discover. When you put a new sign in a yard and take a new listing, the calls you get, like almost all of them, are going to be the neighbors checking at the price in that listing. They're going to be neighbors who are curious about what the home is worth. Why do you think neighbors are curious about what a new listing has just been listed for? It's because a lot of them are going to be sellers, either right away or sometime into the future. That sign, which costs you nothing to put in a yard, an 800 Home Hotline, which costs $35 a month, I think, is going to start generating seller leads for you. Now, I want you to flip the table. You are now sitting in front of a seller. You're in a listing appointment. You've just demonstrated this whole process. Where everybody else is bragging about their 47-step funnel and their landing pages and their this and their other things, you've now shown that seller how you are calling folks back urgently and answering all their questions. I could go on and on about this because we literally made millions and millions of dollars calling people back where everyone else was essentially trying to send them to a funnel. Do you see the power of not just being, of answering the phone, but also following through with voice-to-voice communication? You guys got to go the opposite direction. Everyone else is, essentially almost made a religion of being a passive lead generator. You need to be the exact opposite because that's where the opportunity is.
So let me just translate a little bit because there's so much to what you just rolled out. Remember that the original point, answer your phone in the first place, but if not, they go to 800 Home Hotline. They're either going to zero transfer and you pick up the phone with Tim's script, which by the way is included on 800homehotline.com, or you're going to get notified, as Tim said. Now, a couple of very important points. The number of leads that you get will increase dramatically. Why? Because of what Tim said. People are more likely to call. Remember, your sign says for free 24-hour recorded info, call. They're more likely to do that than to try and find your mobile number.
We're never going to get to point number 2 because it's such a damn good point, honestly.
Possibly.
But here's the thing. Your best leads are the ones that are driving the neighborhood
Yes.
or the people that already live in the neighborhood that are calling off signs. Your best leads are always sign calls. Your crappiest leads, the least motivated leads, are the ones that are basically searching online. And yet you all are buying the ones that are driving or that are going online and searching. Don't you get it? By the time someone's actually driving through a neighborhood, think about the effort that takes. Mm-hmm. They have to get in their car. They have to carve out time. They have to drive around the neighborhoods. They've probably already sifted and sorted through the different communities, focused on a particular neighborhood, maybe even a handful of streets. Those are rock star leads. Oh, but they may already have a relationship, with someone that, yeah, they don't. Otherwise, they wouldn't be looking themselves. You then follow our script, and you'll find out that a lot of them don't have committed relationships to any agents, and that's how you can start converting leads. We do want you to ask whether they're working with someone else. I assume because you're calling me directly, you're not working with another agent, and you're going to hear them say, I'm not committed to anybody. You guys get it?
Especially now, right?
This is about being proactive.
Yes, so the quantity of leads will go through the roof. And the quality also goes through the roof because of what you said. They're either the neighbor, which is a listing lead in buyer's clothing. How many of you, I've talked to agents and I've seen them posting online that they don't even bother using signs anymore because they have too many, quote, buyer leads, right? And because we have this legacy of having low inventory where agents got frustrated, they felt like they couldn't find anything anyway. All of that has changed. We've done podcasts about inventory rising. Now you've got a unique opportunity to have better quality and better quantity. So in terms of leads, that's point number 1.
Go to 1-800-HOME-HOTLINE.com. 1-800 as in the number 1-800-HOME, H-O-M-E, hotline,
HOTLINE.com.
There you go. So 1-800-HOME-HOTLINE.com and check out that website. And if Julie and I are getting back, we did use a very similar system when we sold real estate. And like I said, we converted so many, buyer calls and to actual listings because they're the neighbor's checking price. The higher end, by the way, your listing is, the more effective this is because you're going to get multiple transactions. The person that's driving a neighborhood most certainly is going to have, in a more expensive neighborhood, is most certainly going to have a home or many other properties to sell.
Yes, and we have, I was going to say we could go on and on about 800 Home Hotline, but there are other podcasts that you guys can reference. And I know some of them were furiously jotting down the script that you did because it's such a powerful script and there's so much to it with that strategy that you do. So that script is also included in 800homehotline.com, also part of Premier Coaching. So don't freak out if you didn't write every word.
I just checked, Julie. You can get 800 Home Hotline for 7 days for free, and it is only $35 a month.
Awesome.
No other hidden fees. That's it. $35 a month.
Yeah, practically free. All right, point number 2, practice furiously fast lead follow-up. Now, we just gave you a perfect way to do that using 800 Home Hotline. But if you must call back, strive to do so within a few minutes. Furiously, we always say seconds, really, they barely hung up and you're calling back. Furiously fast lead follow-up shows that you're available, professional, and here to be of service. Answer questions at the time they're being asked, and you'll find that you're setting more appointments and spending less time chasing down the leads. Stop being weird about, quote, bothering them. Jeb Blunt, author of Fanatical Prospecting, says, quote, interrupting your prospect's day is a fundamental building block of a robust sales pipeline. If you don't interrupt relentlessly, your pipeline will be anemic.
And what are you telling them? They called you. We're just using this podcast as the premise is basically you're returning leads or you're chasing down a lead. Aren't you convincing them when you're calling them back that you're serious about helping them, that you're a professional. And if that's a prospective seller, don't you think you're also convincing them that you're not just basically some passive agent that's just waiting around for somebody else to sell your listing? All good things come from being a furiously fast lead follow-upper. Now, if you do run into somebody, and this will hardly ever happen, that is not liking your amount of lead follow-up, that's probably not a real lead. Okay, so what you can say when you talk with someone, there's some rules, and I imagine I'm going to step on some of Julie's notes, but such is the way. When someone says, when you say, call me back in a week, call them back in 2 days. If they say call me back in 2 days, call them back in a day. But even then, call them every single day. And I want you to use a script similar to this. Mr. Seller, I apologize if you think, my mind's going to listings. It could be buyer too. I apologize if I might be calling you too frequently. It's because I'm really looking forward to working with you and excited about the home that we're going to find for you. Something like that. Give yourself permission to follow up with them. Mr. Seller, I want to prove to you how urgent I'm going to be when it comes to basically following up on any leads that might come from when I have your home for sale. And I'm doing that now by calling and following up with you, obviously as frequently as I am.
That's right. And assuming that you did the first steps that we've talked about using the pre-qualification script, you will have pulled out, you will have possibly deemed them not to be a lead at all.
Right.
Maybe they go into your database or not. Maybe they're going to refer you somebody or not, but they're not a lead in terms of somebody who's going to transact in 90 days or less. So then you use your pre-qualification and you may determine that they are a lead. And by asking the questions in that pre-qual script, it will then help you with what you just said. You are going to follow up consistently because you'll have something to follow up about. You found out they wanted a house in the XYZ school district, and you've got something that you're going to call them about regarding that. We're going to get to that's kind of encompassed in a future point too. All right, point number 3, use their preferred method of communication, not yours. Now, this wasn't a problem 10 or 15 years ago, but now it is, and I'm going to demonstrate that to you in a second. Everyone has a preferred method of communication, whether it's text messaging, email, Facebook Messenger, LinkedIn messaging. It's crucial to use the method that your prospect prefers. That means you have to ask them to get a response and communicate in a way that the prospect's comfortable with. According to a recent survey by Twilio, the preferences are as follows, and I'm going to go through these quickly because they have them in the notes. All right, personal calls, voice to voice. 40% of people prefer voice-to-voice phone calls for direct communication. Some of you haven't done that in like months, the actual call, actually picking up the phone.
By the way, that's for all age groups.
Yes.
So the millennials and younger out there that says that doesn't apply to my generation, you are incorrect. And by the way, when you are the one that's making the personal phone call and everyone else is trying to do things digitally, don't you see how that gives you a bit of an unfair advantage in the marketplace? Don't you see how that differentiates you? Don't you see how that your brand will actually be how you want it to be perceived because you're the one that's calling up, you're the one that's being professional, you're the one that's being thorough. Every single top producing agent, like agents making millions of dollars per year, the way I've ever had the honor to coach, have always known the rule that you have to make all your calls yourself. No matter how big and busy they get, they always do their own lead follow-up because they know the power of that connection and asking the right questions.
100%. Now, email, 30% of people prefer email for professional and detailed communication. Now, I prefer email. I'm on the analytical end of the spectrum. I like it because it shows me how to spell somebody's name. It shows me their email sign-off, their phone number, all of their social media in most cases. But not everybody's like that. Especially older people are not as much that on that end of the spectrum. Now, text messaging, 20% prefer text messages for quick and convenient communication. Facebook Messenger is only 5%. I don't know about you, but I've seen messages get lost in Facebook Messenger. It's not the thing that I look at first, right? WhatsApp, it's becoming more and more popular, but only 3% prefer WhatsApp. LinkedIn is only 2%. SMS or chat apps, 60% prefer SMS or chat apps for fast and efficient communication. The thing from a coaching perspective that I don't like as much about that is you don't necessarily know if they even opened it, read it, understood it, it got buried, and maybe they have tons of chat going on. That's why the personal call. So my thought, like let's say we have a new coaching client coming in, I will look at, the back and forth. And if they chatted me and I chatted them, but I don't hear back from them in an hour or two, I'm just going to call them. I'm going to go back to number 1. I'm going to make sure they got the message, make sure that I even sent it to the right phone number back. So your default always needs to go back to the personal call.
I'm going to tell you guys a little story. So Julie and I have a golf cart, and the golf cart breaks occasionally. And the person we bought the golf cart from is not the easiest person to do business with.
No.
Because he just is really crappy with following up on anything. And so he messaged me, probably about 6 months ago and said, I decided to move all my communications to WhatsApp. And I thought to myself, okay, well, I'm going to move to WhatsApp and use only him on WhatsApp. I hardly talk with anybody else on WhatsApp, but he prefers to be. Guys, think about that. He's working for me, right? He's providing me a service, and he's telling me how I have to do business with him in order to get him to talk with me about me essentially spending more money with him. That makes no sense. So go back to Julie's original point. You can ask them how they want to be communicated with. And I think, personally, I prefer text.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why I prefer
Sure.
text. Because it keeps track of the previous conversations. That's the number one reason.
It's searchable.
It's
right?
totally searchable. And now I'll give you guys an example. So we're gonna talk about something now a little bit off the script, but still. All right. So you guys know that Julie and I joined eXp Realty 5-6 years ago, and it's become one of the best business decisions we ever made. Now we have become one of the top sponsors, if not one of the top sponsors at eXp Realty. I'd say largely because of this podcast and all of our coaching clients and all the rest of it. But here's this is very interesting. When I'm asking people to reach out to us to explore whether eXp Realty is the next natural step in their real estate business, I give them two choices. And I'm going to give you guys both the choices, then I'm going to tell you what I've learned. So I give people the option of texting me on my real cell phone number directly if they're ready to join eXp Realty, they haven't chosen a sponsor, and they're looking to land the plane. And I give my phone number, 512-758-0206. So I give them the opportunity to text with me directly if they're ready to choose a sponsor at eXp Realty if they want to be part of our group. Now, what I found is when I leave that just like I just did, I'll definitely get some folks that are interested, but not anywhere near as much as when I give them the option of going about getting information passively. And then, for example, I'll say text the word EXP to 47372. And when you do, you're going to go to our website. We're going to send you back a link. You're going to go to our group's website, and you can learn all about all the reasons that so many agents, thousands of agents have joined with Julie and I at eXp Realty. And so what I've discovered is when I give people the opportunity to get the information in the time frame and the manner of which they like, they can, they'll read about the coaching. They're going to read about the different reasons why so many agents joined with us, all the rest of it. Then after that, if they want to directly communicate with me, there's a little easy form that they can fill out. That's the reason 800 Home Hotline works so well. That's the reason all these other things work out so well. And then what happens is they'll email or they'll text me. But that's the channel of communication. But the thing that matters the most is when they call back, or rather when they text me, or they fill out the form and they email me, I am always the one. Julie and I have lots of people that work for us. And lots of people, frankly, that could do the lead follow-up. But I don't delegate it. I'm going to text that person right back or call them right back. And I'm going to ask them a very simple pre-qualifying question. And we're going to move forward. Or we're going to answer some questions and then move forward. I want you to remember what I just told you. Because as effectively, when you use a system like 800homehotline.com, you will capture more people that aren't quite ready to make a decision, want to gather some more information. And once you've proven, essentially be someone that they can trust, then they're going to feel comfortable and confident having that next level conversation with you, right? Hopefully I'm tying Julie's point 2 and point 3 together so it resonates with all of you. The worst thing you can do is stick them into a long-term lead follow-up campaign and drip on them. And then send them little videos.
Because everybody else is doing that too.
Exactly. And nobody pays attention to that anymore. They just don't. You don't, dear listener. I know you don't. It's oversaturated. All that passive stuff is oversaturated. The money is to be made in voice-to-voice communication. It always has been true, but it's especially true now because everyone else is trying to do the passive stuff.
Well, I remember, it's been a few months now, but Sue and Rachel Romans, coaching clients, longtime coaching clients and part of our EXP family, sent us a text and they said, you're not going to believe what happened. We just picked up a new listing in a neighborhood that they had, this was a sign call off of an existing listing that they had just planted the sign for. And I'll say, well, tell me about how that went. And I think it was Sue that said, here's what happened. The prospect said, we called them immediately back and the prospect said that they had left messages for 3 other agents already. And this had gone on for more than 3 days, not minutes or hours, days. And that you guys, the Romans team, were the only ones who called us back.
Well, but I remember
that's amazing, right?
Again, I'm in my time machine going back to when you and I were really starting to build our brand, our reputation in Columbus as one of the top listing agents. And I remember we are competing against, a lot of times, agents that had been in the business for decades.
Yes.
And you and I were in our 20s, right? And we had no, frankly, right to even be considered for a listing, let alone basically beating these top agents. And time after time, the sellers would say, you guys called, you were the only ones that called me back,
Yep.
or you called me back right away, or you answered the phone when I called, or I got a call back from you. I didn't get a call back from some assistant that obviously didn't give a crap.
Yep.
Those types of things. And you guys, that type of communication is what is going to be a key differentiator with you essentially being in this business in 5 years, let alone 5 months or not. It's because that's what makes the difference. Because in that conversation, you're going to bond with somebody. You're going to connect with them. You're going to use our scripts, AKA conversation outlines, and you're going to pull out of them what their motivation is. You're going to know things about that lead that might make it so that, okay, you can put it on a long-term drip campaign, because they're not really motivated. Just assume they're never going to actually transact with you or anybody else because they're not that motivated. But what you're really doing is you're pulling out the 10% that are. That hopefully you're taking that from today's podcast.
100%. Okay, point number 4, and we'll have to see whether this is our final point today. All right, switch up your contact attempt times. This is a simple thing to fix for some of you. Avoid the habit of reaching out at the exact same time every day. Change the time and day when you try to contact somebody. According to industry research that HubSpot did, the best times to reach someone are best days of the week to call Wednesday and Thursday, most effective days for making contact. Best times to call to reach somebody is between 4 and 6 p.m., followed by 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Best times to text between 3 and 4 p.m. Those have the highest response rates. Now, that is not set in stone. That's not an excuse if you're being lazy agent to say, well, according to those guidelines, if I miss it, I'm not calling on Thursday between 4 and 6 p.m., that I shouldn't bother because nobody's going to answer. That's not true. These are just what people have studied saying that this is the most optimum response time. I always joke in coaching when people say, when's the best time to prospect? When's the best time to do lead follow-up? Anytime you're making yourself doing it at a high level using a script is the best time. These are just some guidelines.
So lead follow-up is only necessary when you weren't able to effectively pre-qualify the person in the first place.
Yes.
So again, if you've got a bunch of leads, you're wimping out on not asking the pre-qualification questions when you actually get them on the phone.
Refer to point number 1 and 2.
Exactly. And every other point on today's show, right? Your goal is to not have a bunch of leads. Having a bunch of leads does not equal a bunch of transactions. Your goal, like getting back to Kevin Yoder, I think he said he has 12 leads. And when he says he has 12 leads, these are buyers that are pre-qualified, have realistic expectations, are ready to transact. Some of them had homes to sell, some of them didn't, or they're sellers that absolutely positively had to sell their homes. We're conditioning the homes to put for sale, oftentimes have the listing contract signed, those types of things. You guys get the difference? They're not just a bunch of people who maybe someday hopefully will transact with you.
Well, he knows that because he did the questions, because he used the pre-qualification conversation outline. He couldn't tell you that this person is both a buyer and a seller, and this is their time frame, and this is their motivation, if he hadn't actually connected with them, which is the topic of today's and tomorrow's podcast, but not just connected, hey, how's it going? What can I answer for you? But doing the drill down on specifically, how can you help somebody?
And by the way, Yoder with, I believe it was 1 full-time assistant and 2 part-time VA assistants. So I assume they're probably from the Philippines or something. In Michigan, sells close to 100 homes and about $1 million per year in GCI. This definitely listen to this interview. It's on Thursday. All right, Julie, let's do one other point.
Okay.
Offer something of value.
Offer something of value. Prospects expect to receive something of value. Always have something valuable to offer, like free market analysis, that's your CMA, hot new listings that meet their criteria, information on new low-interest mortgages, or a new construction model home that you'd like to tour with them. The more customized to the prospect, the more effective it will be. Give them what they want. Make them be dying to call you back if you happen to hit their voicemail or text. Your job is to have the catnip that they are after. And again, back to Kevin Yoder, he's somebody that's going to have a GCI of more than $1 million who is sitting on not 1,200 leads, but 12 pre-qualified leads because he did the connection. He used the script, right? So he offers something of value. Make them be dying to call you back. If they said that they want to build, but they don't know with who, they don't know which neighborhood, they don't know the price range, what does the builder financing look like, then you're the person who follows up saying, you know what, I have talked to 3 different builders. These are all in the neighborhoods that you want. They're in the price range we talked about. I have Friday afternoon or Saturday morning to tour these with you. Call me back immediately so we can set it up.
Or even drill down more. Saturday morning at 10 or would noon be better?
Yeah.
So also, as far as that last point goes, a lot of big broker, well, I shouldn't say that. I know eXp Realty, I think Compass, they have a very, very effective off-market listing system.
Yes.
And so if you're an eXp agent, make sure you're utilizing that because ultimately the best buyer or seller catnip is going to be information that they don't have. And so if your brokerage is smart enough and forward thinking enough to have essentially an inner office, dare I say MLS, that's going to be something that a buyer is obviously going to want, but a seller too, because they're going to want to know about all the comps. We're in this weird time in the economy, this weird time in housing, this weird time just overall. But I have news for you guys, and you'll learn this as the older you get. It's always a weird time.
For one reason or another. Yeah.
There's never not a weird time, ever. And so I'm going to end on this little last minute, this mindset point. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and I forget who said this quote, but the essence of the quote is really what matters. He said that there was a story of, some Titan guy standing in Chicago looking at all the buildings. And he said none of those buildings were ever built by a bear. And the stock market bear, Okay.
Gotcha.
So the idea was a bear in the stock market. When you hear it's a bear's market or whatever, the idea is that people are being pessimistic and they don't believe the prices are going to go up. They believe that tomorrow is going to be worse than today. Well, people who think like that are never going to build a skyscraper, right? Because a skyscraper can take years and years to build. You have to have an innate sense of optimism, even if that doesn't come naturally for you. Because here's the thing, and I remember having this conversation with Brad Inman a long time ago. I've never met a rich pessimist.
No, I don't think they exist.
Yeah, I said that to him, and he laughed. He thought that was, but I've never met a rich pessimist. You have to be optimistic because of all the changes. Because anytime there's a change, even if it's a change you don't feel is just, you could still thrive and survive. You just have to look for the opportunity. And here's the thing that makes me unbelievably off the charts excited about our industry. And that's the fact that the demand for housing is going to go through the roof because of demographics. We could talk about the immigrants, but really I'm talking about the existing the citizens of the United States. There's so much pent up demand for homes. There's so many millennials that want to buy homes. There's so many, baby boomers and whatnot that want to downsize. There's such an enormous demand. We do legitimately have a housing shortage. And this sounds like bad news, but it's not. This has been really the crappiest 3 years in the history of real estate. It just has. This has been tougher in a lot of ways, I think, than even the great housing crash. Because in the great housing crash, even at the very beginning of it, and where no one knew which way was up, it didn't take too long to be able to see the light through the forest, right? You could kind of see your way through. You could kind of see how things were going to return. There are kind of, breaks of, optimism that would creep out occasionally. Frankly, I think Obama did a great job with the different programs he came up with through housing and all the rest of it. It stopped the foreclosure train from ever, leaving the station, short sale, all this, right? Well, we don't have anything like this, but I'm here to tell you we do. You just have to look a little harder. Interest rates are going to fall. There is huge amount of political interest in housing because we are in some form of recession right now, and there has never been a recovery from a recession that has not led with housing, which means it does not matter which side of the political aisle you are on, you're going to see a lot of focus on housing. You're going to see interest rates go down. You're going to see probably a lot of focus on more tax breaks or something. Anything to motivate people to buy a house is what you're going to start seeing again.
And inventory is rising too.
Exactly. And you're in the right place at the right time. But here's the little bugaboo that no one really takes into consideration. Homes have gone up by at least 50% in most markets in the last 3 years. It's because of inflation. Do you think inflation, dear listener, is going away? I know it's basically at 3%, but with interest rates falling, do you think there's going to be an increase in increase in demand for housing, or a decrease? There's going to be an increase. And when there's an increase for anything that there's a scarcity of, especially, what's that going to do to prices? So home prices are still going to go up, which means your commission is based on the percent that the home sells for. Then you're going to get a raise in income. You guys get it? So you are in the right place at the right time. The wind is at your back. You just have to realize that it's there and start making the moves to make the most of the market that is, but especially prepare yourself for the market that will come. There are no rich pessimists. Just remember that. Nobody ever built anything of any significance that did not believe that tomorrow was going to be better than today. Tomorrow is going to be better than today. It's been a 3-year lull. I will grant you that. But the 3-year lull is definitely coming to a conclusion.
That's right. So it's up to you what you're going to do about this. And I know that a lot of you are still frustrated because the whole commission lawsuit changes and all of that. Here's the thing that didn't change that you really have to remember, and exactly what Tim just said. The demand continues to rise. We know that rates are coming down. We know that inventory is going up. So one thing that didn't change as a result of all those rule changes is how many people want to buy and sell. In fact, there's probably more than there was yesterday, and there will be more tomorrow.
We should have had this for today's show, but there was a survey that was recently done. I think it was by Philadelphia Fed or somebody that is not part of housing that asked basically what the people that were completing the survey. It was, I think, a phone thing. And what's your vision? Do you believe in the American dream? Yes. What are the elements of the American dream? Housing was the elements of everyone's American dream. Owning a home, owning, part of America through real estate. So again, be an incredible optimist as we turn the page on what will have, I think, be probably one of the toughest markets in the history of real estate. And yet here all of you are. And yet some of you have been making a fortune in this market because you are in alignment with basically what the market was, looking for, what buyers and sellers wanted. You are in tune with your highest and truest purpose, which is to be of service to other people. Tune that frequency up a little bit higher, have a little bit more intensity, and get ready for what we believe is going to be a long-term, decades-long, a generation of an incredible housing market. But you've got to get your head space in the right space, which means all the other crap that's floating out there, all the other negativity that's floating out there, you're going to have to set it aside and focus again. Like 10th time I've said it today. Your highest and truest purpose on this planet is being of service to other people. You're a real estate practitioner, which means the people in which that you've chosen to be of service to are buyers and sellers. Now you have to earn the right to be of service to them by providing enough value that they're willing to pay for. That's the differentiator. Hopefully this is motivating all of you to get into action. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow for part 2.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.